Alright, today I'm going to show you how to use epoxy. I'm going to be using this Gorilla epoxy, which says that it sets in 5 minutes, to adhere 2 parts of this coaster that I have. As you can see, the coaster has broken, it has come apart, the screws right here no longer viable in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply epoxy within here as well as this surface right here. Now it's important to note that epoxy works better with smooth surfaces, so some items you may indeed have to use perhaps a sanding paper to sand down certain areas of whatever you're trying to epoxy or glue together in order to get it to stay. I think right there, here, this should be efficient enough. I don't think I need to use any sanding paper in order to get this back together. So as you can see, one side is marble and the other side is wood, and then I also have metal and housings right here to where I'm going to put it back together like that. It came apart. So with that being said, I'm going to move back over here to the epoxy itself made by Gorilla. It says that it's good for indoor and outdoor, structural gap filler, bonds metal, wood, ceramics, glass, most plastics, and more. Now there's instructions on the back, and there's important that you read these instructions, directions yourself so you know how to use this product as the manufacturer recommends, and not just listening to what I have to say. This is only my opinion. I am not the manufacturer. I am only doing this to the best of my ability right here. So it's important that you read this and abide by the instructions before using epoxy. So let's go ahead and look at some of the directions right here. It says if you're using Gorilla epoxy for the first time or bonding a new type of material, we always recommend trying a test piece first. So you have to do that. I'm not going to test. I'm just going to go ahead and get her done. All right, so you have to prepare your mixing work area. So use a well-ventilated area. Be sure your work area is protected from spills. A mixing tray and plastic stick are provided. So inside there is a mixing tray and plastic stick. The plastic stick, I believe, is right up in here. And the mixing tray that I'm going to be using is actually the package itself, which I'll use as some sort of well. Okay. Now, when it comes to mixing Gorilla epoxy, all right, it says, and before we get to that, to improve adhesion, roughen smooth surfaces before gluing, clean and dry all surfaces to be bonded. Okay, so we're going to go to mixing the epoxy. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and open this up. And I'm going to pull out the epoxy so we can see it in its full-fledged color. This is the epoxy. I'm going to go ahead and separate the stick that they were talking about with this Gorilla. I'm going to go ahead and press that, and it comes out. So this is the mixing stick right here that I'll be using. And I'll be using the actual tray. So I'm going to take this apart, and I'll be using this right here to mix the epoxy in. So let's go ahead and go back to the directions. So it says right here, remove plastic stick from middle of plunger, which I did. With package pointing upwards, remove the closure from the 2 syringes. So this is the closure, and I'm going to remove this with it facing upwards, okay? But before we get to that, I'm going to go over the instructions following this so we can have this pretty much fluid, okay? And so with the package still pointing upward, eliminate air and ensure even dispensing by slowly pushing the plunger until both the resin and the hardener are at the tip. So one side is the resin and one side is the hardener. Now what it's asking me to do is to open this part, press it upwards to release the air, okay? Because there's air pockets in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have this sit right here while I go over some of the following instructions before we move forward. Now push the plunger to dispense even amounts of resin and the hardener onto the clean, disposable, contained surface. So I'm going to be putting it in here. All right, surface. The package itself can be used as a mixing tray. If you flip the plastic blister shell over, you can use a small well as a starter dish to begin dispensing until both the resin and hardener are flowing equally. So this is the well that I'm going to be using. It's flipped upside down. I'm going to be using it inside of the well right here. Disposable package. Once the flow is even, move to the larger mixing well to dispense your even ratio. Using the plastic stir stick, mix the two parts for about 20 seconds until the mixture is uniform. Now, it's important to apply this mixture within 5 minutes because as you mix, you will notice that the epoxy warms up. This is a reaction that occurs when the resin and hardener combine. Now, application. After mixing is complete, apply Gorilla Epoxy within 5 minutes. The epoxy mixture will continue to thicken and bond strength will decrease the longer that you wait to apply. So once I put it in here, I am on a time crunch in order to get it mixed and applied to my item that I'm trying to glue back together or epoxy back together. Now, the reason why I'm on a time crunch is because what it says in the instructions is that the strength of the epoxy will diminish the longer that I wait. And it says apply it within 5 minutes. So I really have to do it. Now, clamping. To reach maximum strength, clamp together with a cloth and align notch. Okay? That's how I'm going to clamp it together right after I apply it. To close, slightly pull back the plunger, wipe clean with a dry cloth, and align a notch on tip and cap and close tightly. So it's important that you follow these. There's also some warnings on here. You should definitely read those before using this product because you will need to be safe. Just don't look at this video. Remember to actually read the instructions. Now it says right here, set time, 5 minutes to apply and position. Handling time is within 30 minutes you can handle it. Okay, 30 minutes undisturbed. So first 30 minutes you do not disturb it, but then you can handle it afterwards. Now for it to cure, 24 hours for load-bearing weight. Application in cooler temperatures may cause longer curing time. Now the temperature range, it says it bonds, withstands -10 degrees Fahrenheit up to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. It dries clear, and after use, clean syringe and replace clear cap, store in cool, dry place. Clean up, remove excess glue immediately from project surface with dry and acetone, mineral spirits, or rubbing alcohol. It says, see below for removal from skin. Important that you read all this. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Now what it said is you remove this tip right here. Okay, so you remove this. I'm just going to go like, and when I'm reapplying it, there's some nubs in here, and I just simply plug it back in there. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the air gap that it says that it has. All right, so there's air gap at the top. We're going to eliminate the air gap before we get started. So I'm going to slowly press this upwards. Slowly press it upwards. Oh, that didn't mean to happen. That slowly. So I have my dry clean cloth to wipe off any excess. All right. So I can smell it a little bit. So we got rid of the air pockets that are in here. And now we're ready to apply it inside of the well that I'm going to be mixing with my mixing stick. So I'm going to apply some into the well. And I'm going to get closer so you can see this a little bit better. So I'm going to apply some inside of the well. Equal parts. Equal parts, and I want to get enough in there so I'm able to adhere the entire coaster. And then once I do that, what I like to do is I'm going to pull this back in order to pull the product back in, and then I'm going to wipe it with the dry cloth and then plug it back in here. Now the time crunch is on, so once I've dispensed it, I am on a time crunch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to go ahead and mix this. And it says mix it for 20 seconds. And that's what I'm doing, making sure that I'm mixing it well for 20 seconds. Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So I've mixed the epoxy with the hardener. Now it's time for me to apply it to this. Let me pull out a little bit. And so here is the coaster that I'm going to fix. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a little bit inside of the well. Okay? So I'm going to drop a little bit inside of the well where the screws are going to go. All right, so I'm going to do that. Now I have about 5 minutes before to apply all this. And the longer I wait, the less effective this epoxy will be. So once I have some on the side, I'm just going to put some on the middle right here. And when I clamp it together, it should spread out. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and put some on that side and a little bit on this side. And it's important to keep a dry cloth close because you'll want to wipe off any excess that comes up. All right? So I have some right there. Let me get some on the end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this to the side right here. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to clamp it together into place. Okay? And when I clamp it together, you can see it's aligned and there is some epoxy that's coming up on both ends. Okay? And so what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to go ahead and take this right here, dry cloth, and I'm going to get up the excess epoxy from off of this. It's important that you do it right now because once it dries, you will find it very difficult to remove any of the excess epoxy. Okay, so it's important that I got the surface level, which will be seen more. I got all of the epoxy off of that. Now I'm going to go under, and then I'm going to get the bottom part of it. All right. So I have that epoxy right there. And then, so what I'm doing now is it's curing. So 5 minutes, I had 5 minutes to apply it. Now I have to wait 30 minutes for it to be handled and then 24 hours for it to be cured. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it right on this surface right here. You see, I have a brown paper bag, which I use as a surface so I don't spill any of the epoxy on the table. I'm going to keep this in place for 30 minutes before I handle it. Have it clamped tight. It's important. If you can't clamp it tight by itself, you should get something to clamp it tight with. But I have it clamped tight, and within 30 minutes, I should be able to handle it normally, supposedly. And then within 24 hours, it would be strong enough to be used again as a coaster. All right, and so that is how you use epoxy. This is made by Gorilla. Incredibly strong. This is how you use epoxy glue to glue something together. I hope this video was helpful. Thanks a lot for watching.